rivals go head-to-head this weekend when the Pirates face the Cubs at Wrigley.
Swing and a miss. He stuck him out.
The pregame at 3 Eastern, first pitch at 4. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd podcast.
So I can't believe, until today, I can't believe how little ESPN and others have talked about the draft. I mean, the draft basically, in my last 10 years of broadcasting, owns large stretches of inventory. Not this year. Why? Because we got to fight. Now, I love the draft, and I love the fight. But I'll tell you, and I see this with my audience, there is a little bit of a disconnect between 17 to 27-year-old guys who didn't grow up with boxing. You either didn't grow up with it because of its inactivity, or you like the MMA. But sports networks, newspapers, radio networks, TV networks are run by 45-year-old men. And this is their midlife crisis. This takes them back. This takes them back when they were a little thinner and they had a little more hair and they were a little more energetic. And this fight takes them back. Just like it takes that guy back when he goes to a Billy Joel concert. He feels like 32 again, 28 again. Going to the city, a night with his girlfriend, big concert. A lot of my young guys are like, my fans are like, you guys are way into this fight. Totally get it. You didn't grow up with it. But what boxing is doing to the NFL draft is what it's done my entire life. Walks in. Doesn't matter if it called to get a reservation. It just gets the first spot in line. It's glamorous. It's vulgar. It's violent. It's a money grab. There's scandals everywhere. And we can't turn away from it. Even yesterday, at a random press conference, not even the weigh-in, not even the fight, it was gamesmanship with the two fighters staring at each other. And the key is you don't want to be the first to look away. Here's Teddy Atlas's commentary after just yesterday's press conference.
That's the first round of psychological warfare. That was the first round of the fight, right there. Psychologically, they were seeing who was going to break first. And you know what? I saw Manny break first. I saw Manny break his eyes away a little bit before Floyd. For me, Floyd won that first round.
Have you ever heard an announcer say, the Ravens won the coin flip? I like the Ravens. They were awesome in pregame. That's what boxing's all about. That's why guys like me are geeking out, and if you're 26, you don't quite get it, it's my Billy Joel concert. And someday, you 26-year-olds, you're going to be 46 and 56. And you're going to go back and go, dude, Bieber's on the radio! Except there is nothing called radio anymore. Bieber's on the eye something. It takes me back. Now I'm 46 in a crappy job. I'm overweight and I got a comb over. But man, I love Bieber. That's what it'll be. I've learned one thing through my years of covering sports. Almost nothing lives up to the hype. Okay, almost nothing. The Seahawks-Patriots Super Bowl was an exception. Thought it would be great, it was. But my prediction for the draft and the fight is the draft is going to be a lot better than people think, and the fight's not going to quite live up to the hype. All my years of doing this, I can count on one hand. We thought it would be great, it was. The Red Sox-Yankees American League Championship Series, the Aaron Boone Home Run Series, we thought it would be great, it was. I can remember the Blazers-Lakers Series 2000. Blazers had an all-star team, Shaq, Kobe. Thought it would be great, was. USC-Texas National Championship game. Thought it would be great, was. And this year's Super Bowl. That doesn't happen. A lot of people think Pacquiao-Mayweather. All this build-up. Styles make fights. They're both out of their prime. I don't think it's going to be a great fight. Everybody's banging on this draft. There's not a lot of stars. You don't necessarily need stars to have a great draft. When there's only a handful of stars, what will happen tonight and tomorrow, in my opinion, a lot of movement. People that don't want their pick. Or people that think there's only a handful of stars and they're moving up to get their pick. Now, this is Rustin Webster, the GM of the Titans. You talk about brutal honesty about tonight's draft. Listen to this.
This is not an exceptionally deep first round. There might be, 16, 17 kind of legit guys, so it's not real deep. So from that standpoint, team looks pretty good.
Okay. So again, we know that it's not the greatest draft, and we know that it's not the deepest draft, right? We know that stuff. But that doesn't mean you won't get activity. To me, the Redskins just announced from ESPN 980, Redskins didn't announce it, they're reporting it. A high-level source said they're not locked into anybody. They're open to multiple guys and multiple trades. I think a lot of people tonight are thinking just that. Heard brought to you by Regis. New way to work. Call 1-800-OFFICES, 1-800-OFFICES. I think, I'll tell you what, if I was the Tennessee Titans with that number 2 pick, I would just sit by the phone. You know what I may do? I may even open up a 1-800 line and have like a call center. That if I was the Tennessee Titans, you may have 9 teams vying for that. Here, if I'm the Tennessee Titans, this is what I do. If you're interested in Marcus Mariota, press 1. If you're really interested, press 2. If you're willing to surrender 3 first-round picks, press 0 for immediate assistance. That line, that call center, they may need to go to like Singapore. We need phone banks. We need 6 people could be giving away. Mariota may be the only player in this draft. If Jameis Winston goes 1 and is locked in, that means there's only one other player in this draft that can change the franchise in a year. You don't think there's going to be movement for him? Sal Paolantonio joining us, feet on the ground. Okay, you've covered this team in this league for a long time, and Sal, you've covered a lot of drafts. What is the energy right now around that Eagles football team?
Most anticipated draft day in a generation. Now, you're right. I have covered this team for the Philadelphia Inquirer and ESPN since 1993. I've never, ever felt anything like it. The buzz around this football team, everywhere you go, doesn't matter. Stop in the 7-Eleven for a little coffee. Stop to pick up some pretzels. As you come in, next driver, at the house. What are we doing, Sal? What's going on? I mean, everywhere you go in this town, Chip Kelly has created a buzz. Back page of the Philadelphia Daily News today, a mocked-up picture of Chip Kelly holding up a Mariota jersey with Mariota standing next to him. Everybody wants to know if Chip Kelly can pull off this deal. It'll be the deal, literally, of the century in the draft. There's no question. To go from 20 to 2 and be reunited with your former pupil from Oregon, people don't think it's real, and I think everybody's just waiting. They're on the edge of their seats right now, Colin.
Sal, how realistic is it? They would obviously not only have to give up picks, but a Pro Bowl level player, in my opinion, to make that kind of gigantic move. Who are they willing to give up, in your opinion, and how realistic is it?
As Chip Kelly said, no one on this roster is untouchable. So let's throw some names out there, and we don't know whether they're real or not, but Fletcher Cox, Pro Bowl level defensive tackle. Michael Kendricks, inside linebacker who missed a bunch of games last year because of a leg injury. He'd probably be available because they probably don't want to re-sign him to a long-term deal. The big question is whether, A, they want to trade Sam Bradford, and B, whether there's any realistic interest in Bradford. Remember, as Chris Mortensen reported a few days ago, the Eagles wanted to extend Bradford. Bradford wanted to be extended here. But Bradford's representatives asked for a no-trade clause. What does that tell you? Bradford's people were concerned that the Eagles would then sign and trade Bradford because Bradford didn't want to do a deal long-term with anybody else, namely the Cleveland Browns. So there's lots of intrigue behind the scenes about players, about possible players and picks being traded. I just go back to what Chip Kelly said. He said Sam Bradford wasn't brought in here as a trading chip. He said, I don't want to mortgage the future with a number of picks to go up and get one player. But there's credible information all over the NFL to the contrary.
Now, Sal Pal's in Philadelphia saying this has a buzz that feels generational in Philadelphia with a draft tonight, Marcus Mariota, and the Eagles and the kind of Svengali approach to offense that Chip Kelly's created, where other teams now, Belichick looks to Chip Kelly as this is kind of the offense quarterbacks want to play in, especially new young guys with mobility. Do you believe there is a team out there that the Eagles are concerned with, one team that would move up and get Mariota, that is willing to mortgage more than Philadelphia? Do they have a rival in this move toward Marcus?
I think it's Cleveland, obviously, because, they have a quarterbacks coach there that trained with Mariota and liked Mariota. But, to me, the offensive fit is the perfect storm here in Philadelphia. I don't think you can duplicate it. What I've been told is that Mariota's family wants to get Chip and Mariota reunited. And they want to do everything they possibly can to convince people around the NFL that Mariota belongs with Chip. So, that's the issue is there a better fit? And I frankly don't see a better fit. But the biggest problem is, Colin, you got to go from 20 to 2, Colin. No one's. I don't think anybody's ever pulled that off. If he pulls it off, it's a once in a lifetime kind of situation.
Yeah. Before we let you go, Sal Pal in Philly, when does Chip Kelly wave the flag on this thing, or do you think they're making calls up until the pick?
I think they're making calls up until the pick.
Man, I love the draft.
Oh man, this is so exciting. This is the first time they put me with a team that's got the 20th pick in the draft.
Right. Hey, who does Fat Tony like in the fight Saturday?
They're all over Mayweather. Can't convince them otherwise. They're all over Mayweather.
Sal Pal, good talking to you, bud.
You're the best.
There you go. There's the very latest.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
I knew I was going to have Whitlock on. He just showed up early. ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive. More independent agents sell it than any other brand. That's Progressive. Years ago, it's story time for Uncle Colin before I talk to my friend Jason. And years ago, I was in Lake Tahoe at Caesars. And I was staying there with my ex-wife, and we lived in Las Vegas, and we loved Tahoe. So we go up to Tahoe, and we're staying at Caesars. And, it's a nice place. We didn't stay extravagantly, but we had maybe a $1,000 bill. So Sunday morning, here's a secret sometimes. If you gamble at like 5 in the morning and you tip really well, those people on those tables, they talk. And we got a lady that kept saying, I wouldn't hit. I would hit. I'd pass. I won 14 straight hands and paid my bill for the weekend. Jason Whitlock's joining me.
I've done better than that, Colin.
Jason, you are having the greatest weekend you have ever had in your life at the tables.
I've been here since Saturday.
Since last Saturday?
Since Saturday.
Oh, that's a recipe for success, yeah?
I have not lost a dime. I've won every day.
Now, I know you, Jason, and you're putting that money in a CD for the future.
I paid off my mother's car already.
You did?
Yes. I was paying, I was making payments, but I just cut the check to pay it off.
By the way, I've got an LR3 that could use some new tires.
I'm telling you, Colin, it's incredible the feeling that I have.
Let's talk about that. You've covered a lot of events, okay?
Yes. I've been in Vegas a lot.
What is it, Jason, about boxing? Describe to a 24-year-old who doesn't get a 50-year-old like me, and it's my Billy Joel concert. It's my midlife crisis. It takes me back.
It does. Boxing to me in the big events, and I've been coming to the MGM since I think 96. Whenever Tyson got out of jail and started fighting again, I started coming to the MGM and fights. And to me, it is the greatest sporting event going.
Event?
Yes, event. The actual fights are garbage, generally speaking. But the event, the spectacle, the celebrities. Now, I mean, it's no longer true, but back when Tyson was fighting, it's like you would be on the craps table and the entire Boys to Men group would be at the craps table next to you. And then over at the other table would be Jodeci. And, I mean, the celebrities that came out, and then just the beautiful people, yes. Would come out and be dressed so provocatively. And it was just incredible. I can remember, I don't know, maybe it was Peter McNeely, or I don't know, I brought my dad and my brother out. And my dad had been to some big boxing events, but he had not in Vegas. I think he had been in New York back during the Ali era. But they just couldn't believe it. It's one of the greatest moments me, my dad, and my brother ever had.
Vegas was largely founded by the Kansas City mob.
Yes.
You have written...
I've got friends in Kansas City. I got to be careful what I say here.
Okay, and I have friends in Vegas. I have to be careful. But we both earned our chops, kind of, in mob cities. There's 4 or 5 in the country. Philadelphia, New York, Kansas City, Tampa, and Las Vegas are the American mob cities. When you were in Kansas City...
Yes.
A lot of people were big deals out here in Vegas. Did you know it at the time?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, my God, yes. And again, people back in Kansas City will hear this and they'll think I'm talking about my personal friend, but I'm actually not. At a guy that ran a very popular strip club in Kansas City was barred from Vegas. He was, a shady gambler.
Yes.
And had a huge reputation out here. And had to come back to Kansas City and ran a strip club at 18th and Grand. But, yeah, I definitely knew that. I mean, and look, a lot of these people, they were friends of mine. You know, I had a 4th of July picnic dinner or whatever in the heart of North Kansas City, in the heart of the neighborhood where everybody in that neighborhood is connected or has a name that's in the paper. You can Google it and find out all what they've done.
I have Jeffrey Ma on our last hour, who is the card counter. He is the topic of one of my favorite books written of all time, the MIT guys that came out here and card counted, made an interesting movie. Can I tell you my one mob story?
Go ahead, please.
So when I was in Las Vegas, this is just story time with Uncle Calder. So when I was in Las Vegas, the Joe Pesci character in Goodfellas was Tony Spilotro. And small guy, tough guy. And I worked in the local media, so he was on our news constantly. And, I mean, literally, nightly, he was on the news. And there were a couple of mob reporters in town. They worked for the CBS affiliate. So one night I go to dinner on Spring Mountain Road, and I go to dinner at late, because I was doing the sports. So it was late, and restaurants, Vegas was much more 24/7 then. The cafe at Mandalay Bay doesn't open until 7 now.
Is that right?
Vegas is very corporate. It used to be 24/7.
Yes.
That thing doesn't open until 7 now. So I go to a restaurant at 11:30. It's moving. I walk in, sit down, look over. There's Tony the Ant Spilotro. And he looks at me because I'm on the news. But I think to myself, he doesn't know that I'm a sports guy. He thinks I'm like to him, I'm just a TV guy. I'm a rat. And I had to go to the bathroom so bad. I wouldn't go to the bathroom because I thought Tony the Ant would walk in and clip me. So that's the only time I ever got up close. And, second story quickly, I met my first wife at Marie Callender's up on Sahara. That parking lot is the parking lot where Lefty Rosenthal, the Robert De Niro character in Casino, was blown out of a car. I have been in that parking lot and met my first wife there. Okay, I'm done telling mob stories. That, by the way, I'm a very nice family man. 2 times in my life for 5 minutes, I hung with Jimmy and Vinny and whatever. When you look at the fight, Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather, one appears to be more redeemable as a human being. That narrative in this fight, what do you make of it? That Floyd doesn't deserve to be here.
Well, I think Pacquiao is going to try to use that to his emotional advantage. I think Pacquiao sees himself the way Muhammad Ali saw himself, in terms of Ali convinced himself mentally his victory and dominance in boxing was good for African American people.
Agreed.
And when he went over to Africa and fought George Foreman, he tapped into that, whatever the Nation of Islam had taught him and whatever he believed at that time. He tapped into that emotionally and beat a man that was better than him, much tougher hitter, and he survived things. And so I see Pacquiao saying, you know what, I'm not as good as Floyd, but I'm going to tap into this emotion and my religion, and he's making he's leading with his religion and Christianity and his beliefs. I think he thinks he's going to do good for the world if he takes out Floyd Mayweather. And so I think it's important, because I think it plays into why Pacquiao has convinced himself this is the right fight, the right time, and he can beat Floyd. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's the emotional edge he wants to have in this fight.
All right, there's a bunch of topics I want to get to. Situation, civil unrest in Baltimore, the Freddie Gray situation. As a prominent, outspoken African-American who often in his own community, you are polarizing because of your takes. You call them as you see them. This one, once again, it's police. It's a black victim. There is some civil anarchy. How do you weigh in on it?
This is a byproduct of mass incarceration and America's decision to prosecute a drug war and over-incarcerate a lot of people. And so they've imposed a lot of hopelessness and a lack of direction on a lot of people. And so when I look out and see young people in the street at all hours of the day, during the daytime, at night, I sit there and go, well, hold on. When I was young, I was in football, basketball practice. I was busy and didn't have time to be in the streets unless we were playing athletics. And, I was filled with hope. I was part of a generation that was filled with hope. My parents were a part of Martin Luther King's generation, and they believed they could make investments in me, and me and my brother would do better. And, that has played out. That's true. I look at this generation, the family structure has broken down, and, partially or tremendously, and the problem accentuated by mass incarceration, the family structure is broken down, and there's no hope. And so I look at young people, I'm like, oh, my God, how can you be out doing this, burning up your own community and tearing up things? And they just look hopeless to me.
Mark Cuban calls it invisible. If you feel you're invisible, you'll do invisible things.
Yes.
And if you feel hopeless, I've told friends this before. I voted for Reagan, and my dad loved Reagan, but I said the Reaganomics sounds good, but in the end, it did create some hopelessness, lots of it. And never forget who's building the bridges, who's driving that taxi, who's doing the things you don't want to do. It's those people we drive by in our SUVs. You have to create a society, and this is beyond race to me.
Yes.
You have to create a society in which every economic strata believes they matter, believes they absolutely are part of the fabric of the country.
The point you made about how this is bigger than race is what frustrates me about Baltimore and Ferguson and other places, because we're trying to reduce it down to just race. And I agree, as black people, we have it worse, but income inequality and the things that were put in place to funnel all the wealth one direction is impacting everyone.
Sure.
The Occupy Wall Street movement and all this other stuff, if we broaden the discussion, trust me, there's a lot of white people that are feeling rather hopeless and like, man, the deck is stacked against us as well. If we broaden the discussion and don't just reduce it to race, there's a great chance you can enact change that will relieve some of this.
And by the way, when it's not a racial discussion and it is just a discussion about inequality, everybody again feels included.
Yes.
Because when it becomes a racial topic only and I turn on CNN, I don't feel like I can do anything about that.
And it's not unlike the piece that we wrote for the Undefeated, Brando Starkey, about that race narrative drives a lot of traffic in terms of CNN, TV networks. You play the race card at Fox News, MSNBC. People are interested. They're interested in the black-white struggle. Where Martin Luther King was going at the end of his life was making connections with the labor movement and the broader community.
That's right.
And other working class people, tying our plight together with other working class people, and then we could all move forward together. But we got to remember, we're 13% of the population. And so if we don't build bridges with other groups, we're not going to enact the kind of change necessary to relieve some of the hopelessness.
But it bothers me when you say we're 12% of the population, because I consider you a friend. I consider you not only an intellectual equal, but probably smarter than me. I don't consider you, Jason Whitlock, to be a minority. I consider you, this is how I view you, as a Caucasian male, as not only an equal, but as a challenging partner in my business. That's why I bring Bill Simmons on. You challenge me.
That's all true, Colin, but how I view myself and how I have to view myself here in America, I'm a black man every day of the week for 48 years.
Yeah.
And there's a way that America reacts to me as a black man, and I can never lose sight of that. And so I respect what you're saying and agree with it.
That you're smarter than me?
No. That, we're peers and equals and all that. But I cannot, as a black man, be in denial of my blackness and what that means and represents here in America. So, again, I don't say that to be off-putting to others.
Right.
It's just a reality I have to deal with, because our histories, basically, our ethnic, racial histories are different.
Yeah, and by the way, this is why I love this topic and I love bringing you on the show. We can have an adult conversation about this. My knock on the blogosphere is that any racial discussion, it's race baiting. This is two guys who like each other. I think you respect me. I certainly respect you.
I would not be here.
Really?
If I did not.
Especially walking in this heat.
Yeah.
But I think this kind of thing we talk about, I wish was a dialogue that more shows had. This is incredibly healthy to me. The Baltimore situation, we should all be talking about it.
It's really incredibly healthy. But because of the blogosphere and because of the desperation that even bloggers feel, they have to get clicks.
Yes.
And so people have to be exploited in their minds. And so people look at you and me and Simmons and Lebitard and others as we're clickbait. We're not human beings. And so reduce what we say to something clickable and something ridiculous. And, and so, again, those are people struggling. Look, you and I have nothing to complain about.
God, not after your week on the table. Good hell.
We have good lives. And so we got nothing to complain about. But, yes, I wish that we were allowed to have these discussions, say things that may not be 100% correct.
And uncomfortable.
Yes.
But we say them.
Right, without being demonized. Because, again, there are no perfect human beings with perfect thoughts.
Right.
I don't know any. I think a lot of really stupid things and have had to evolve and grow over the course of my life. I didn't come out of the womb understanding people from the LGBT community. I had to learn.
Hey, listen. A week ago, Conan O'Brien's making jokes about Bruce Jenner. Now he feels guilty.
Yes.
I thought the Bruce Jenner discussion was fascinating. I watched with my wife, and I'm like, man, I don't even know. I thought Bruce Jenner was confused about Bruce Jenner.
Listen, I watched it and thought, what's important about Bruce Jenner is I'd never thought about the issues that he's talking about.
Exactly.
And it's like, I have a whole new perspective And it's like, damn, this is important. What he's doing is important. I don't think it's some publicity stunt.
And I didn't think that an hour before the interview.
No.
And an hour later, I literally felt like I watched Bruce Jenner, and I'm like, I'm smarter today in this moment than 2 hours ago.
And I feel for people, because I think back, and I don't want to call the person.
We got a minute left.
I won't call the person's name, but I can think about a kid we grew up with in our high school that clearly had sexuality issues.
Gender issues,
and wasn't allowed to be himself and was ridiculed. And Bruce Jenner, has taught me, and I'll teach my young nephews and other young people I come in contact with, if there's some kid that's different, let him be. You got to, that's not, he's done nothing wrong or she's done nothing wrong. That's the way they were born, and we need to allow room for that.
This has been off sports, but my favorite 10 minutes of the week. I love having you on.
Thank you, Colin. You've taken me from the craps table.
I hope I'm not like, what do they call it, a cooler in Vegas where I cooled you down.
I hope my mother's not listening to this because she'll call me and hit me up for some more money.
Good seeing you, buddy.
Thank you, Colin.
ESPN Radio. With the action on the court, the diamond, or the gridiron.
Comes alive.
The NBA.
The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
Major League Baseball.
San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
The new college football playoff.
College football playoff national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Your home for the best in sports play-by-play.
ESPN Radio.
Timmy Legler joining me on set. I'm going to go to a story for about a minute before I go to Tim. Years ago, there was a movie, you've probably seen it, called Apocalypse Now. Apocalypse Now was a movie, and that there was nothing but trouble. It was supposed to take 4 months to shoot. It took 16. The lead actor had a heart attack. They ran out of money. Marlon Brando was supposed to show up thin and prepared. He showed up fat and hated the script, and ultimately shaved his hair overnight, showed up the next day. They had to reshoot. They had weather condition problems, budget issues. But in the end, Apocalypse Now is an all-time great because, frankly, it was interesting. It succeeded despite itself. We're in Vegas, and that's what boxing is. It's got scandals. It's a money grab. It's got no commissioners. It will succeed Saturday night like Apocalypse Now despite itself. And that's why we're here at the Mandalay Bay. And Tim Legler got a call a couple of weeks ago. And they said to Tim, even though it's a boxing week, we need an NBA analyst to come out to be on the shows. Was that the greatest phone call you've ever received at ESPN? To come out here and about once a day talk hoops for 8 minutes and hang out here?
Well, at first I thought I was looking for Ashton Kutcher because I was waiting to get punked. I'm like, okay, where is he? They got me. Are you kidding me? Yeah, you can't beat it. First of all, I mean, who doesn't love coming to Vegas? I'm an enormous boxing fan. I've been looking forward to this fight for years like everybody else, so I cannot wait for Saturday night. But in the meantime, obviously, some NBA playoffs are going on. There's some drama that's starting to take place in the playoffs. It's getting more and more interesting now by the day as we get deeper into it.
Okay, let's talk about the Cleveland situation. I contend Mozgov arrives, Love, Tristan Thompson, LeBron, Kyrie, J.R. Smith. It's really a special team potentially. And it became that after Mozgov arrived. Now Love's out. I don't know if they can beat Chicago. I think it's now a really long series. Let's start with this. If Chicago eventually beats Milwaukee, and I think we both think it's going to happen.
Right.
Can Cleveland beat Chicago without Love?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
And honestly, I'll even lean more toward I don't think so. Because Kevin Love's been beat up this year, and I thought a lot of it was unjustified because of the role that he was placed in. And I tried to explain all season long when he was getting beat up about lack of production. When you are a guy that, even though it was a bad team in Minnesota, when everything goes through you, and you can go 5-6 minutes at the start of the game if you want to and just get loose because you know you're going to get 20-plus shots. At some point, you're going to get 8 consecutive shots if you want to. It's a totally different mindset than come down the floor. We want you to primarily stand at the three-point line. You're not going to get post touches anymore. You're going to shoot a lot of threes, so therefore your offensive rebounding numbers are going to plummet. You're not going to get to the line anymore because you're not in the paint. All of these things, and you just ask a guy to do that, he had a really hard time adjusting to that. But when you have looked at when they play their best, Kevin Love is the guy that makes all the difference because he absolutely punishes you if you try to provide the help necessary
to stop LeBron and Kyrie.
LeBron and Kyrie living in the lane. He punishes you. And J.R. Smith's actually in a much better role here than he was in New York because he's doing the same thing. And in New York, he was the kind of guy like, oh, Melo's going to shoot so much, then I got to create all this offense for myself too. Now he knows the ball will come his way, more content to shoot threes, but Love is the guy to me that makes that go offensively because of the spacing.
Flexibility. He adds flexibility to their offense.
He just crushes you when you think you've done a good job with help defense, and there's 2 passes, kick out, and there's Kevin Love standing in the corner. You know, a guy that's on the Team USA, by the way, is just standing out there just killing you like it's practice. To me, without him and his defensive rebounding, he's still a double-digit rebounder guy.
Clog the lane.
It's going to be a different thing for Cleveland now. It really is. It's a different scenario altogether. Let's see. You know. Beginning of that series, I think, is going to be very telling, the first couple of games.
You know what's funny? Everybody in our business wants a prediction.
Yeah.
I want to see the first 2 rounds of Mayweather-Pacquiao. Then I'll tell you who's going to win the fight.
Right.
I need to see the first 2 games of that series.
Right.
Like, fans sometimes want
I know. Well, not just fans. I mean, here, where we work, right, they want you to tell you the night before opening night of the season who's going to win it all. And then 2 weeks later, who do you think now? You know, you get it all year long. It's just part of what we do, and you understand it. But the truth is, if you're really analyzing these things, you have to see some things first.
You know,
how they evolve.
10 years ago, a coach named Mike Bellotti at Oregon. And I said, Mike, when I watch you, you always have your hands on your knees early in the game. Like, you're always crouching down, but you don't do that late. And he always told me something, Tim, I've never forgotten. He said, Colin, the first 2 series of a game, I line up with the ball, and I want to see if my Oregon teams in the trenches can go toe-to-toe.
Yeah.
If we can't, I have to change the game plan.
Yeah.
Much like you and I need to see a loveless Cleveland team. Can LeBron and Kyrie go and score at the rim?
Right.
I don't know if they can. So you and I agree on that. Now,
absolutely.
You touched on something I think is very interesting here. Everybody that makes the NBA, whether they have John Crotty's career, Tim Legler's, Steve Kerr's or Dennis Rodman's or Michael Jordan's, you were all dominant high school, college AAU players. And part of your success is based on ego, aspiration. You touched on this, I think is fascinating. They're asking Kevin Love, and by the way, he's an elite NBA player. We want you to reduce your game. Does this injury and that reduction, is Kevin Love a Cav next year?
Well, I've thought all year long he's not a guy that looks like he was enjoying the process a whole lot. Now, I could be wrong. There were some times more than others looked like he was having a little bit more fun, more included. But I always got the impression the first half of the season when I'd watch them play that Kevin Love kind of looked around like, thought this was like the big 3. It doesn't really feel that way. You know, LeBron and Kyrie would have these ridiculous individual performances on certain nights, and Kevin Love never really got any of those. And I kind of got that impression, you know, a little bit younger than Chris Bosh was when he paired up with Wade and LeBron, different personality type when Bosh went down to Miami. And so the sacrifice there probably wasn't as great to him and the way he viewed it as it was for Kevin Love at that age to go there now and do it and kind of not feel as included as those guys were and why we're winning. I think that was something that probably bothered him because it wasn't ever about Kevin Love while they were winning games. When they started to really take off, after LeBron came back from that 2-week rest and injury, they took off. But it wasn't about Kevin Love. It was about Kyrie and LeBron and the new people, Mozgov and J.R. Smith and Shumpert. They put us over the top. Kevin Love never really was the guy that ever felt included in, well, we're pretty good. I've got a lot to do with this. And so I've always said, I don't know if he's really enjoying this. If he wins a title, he might be more apt to leave than stay.
I say this all the time. We in the media love to judge. But if ESPN said, Colin, you can no longer host a show and express your thoughts, go cover hockey on radio, I'd be bitter.
Yeah.
Well, if I have an ego, why can't an athlete? Tim Legler joining us. All right, Spurs, Clippers. I still contend the Clippers roster is more athletic.
Oh, no question. Than the Spurs?
Yes.
Oh, no question.
I think San Antonio closes it out tonight.
I think they close it out tonight, and I think they get through this series. To me, this was the worst matchup for the Spurs because of the athleticism on their front line. And even Chris Paul, who Tony Parker, at this stage right now, he doesn't look right to me. That's a major problem, having to guard a guy like Chris Paul. Hit you with a million ball screens. You got these athletes running at the rim. They got shooters. I thought this was the worst matchup for the Spurs. And if they can survive this and get through this, kind of smells like they're gonna beat Houston in the next round.
I absolutely believe
And now
that.
you end up with San Antonio Golden State, which is fascinating. Conference finals.
I think I would go Golden State.
I don't want to dismiss
though.
the Rockets that easily because they're a very good team, but it just kind of feels like Spurs are now going on one of these deep runs.
I don't know if San Antonio can chase those shooters around. I don't know if they can. I kind of like Golden State in that matchup. Finally, Tim Legler joining us here in Vegas. When you look at Rondo, we got about 45 seconds.
Yep.
You're the Lakers. That town wants winners. Would you roll the dice at the right number for him?
The right number, that's the key. I think if you didn't say that part, I would have said I would be really, really careful.
You can get Rondo cheap.
I don't know if you're going to get him cheap, but you're going to get him at less than you would have had to if he hadn't gone through some of the things
So
that
you're
he
the
has.
GM tomorrow. You're kind of helpless.
Yeah.
The West is formidable. You'd roll the dice.
Here's
on
the
it.
problem I have with a guy like Rondo and giving him major money. If you're a team like the Lakers that's literally in complete rebuild mode, he's not the kind of guy that's going to carry you. When was Rondo at his best? He had great players around him, and he's perfect at that. Set the table. He doesn't really want to shoot a lot. He's not big about numbers. He wants to impact the game on both ends, but he wants to facilitate more than anything else.
Should be your third best player.
Right, and if you pay him, you're my best player money, I don't know what return you're going to get on that because that's not really who he is.
And that's never worked in any sport.
It doesn't.
You have to pay Brady the most,
right.
Gronk second,
right.
Rivas third. Good seeing you, buddy.
You got it. Always,
you look
Colin.
so Vegas right now.
This is perfect.
You know what?
Why can't I do this in Bristol? Why can't I wear these? Is this a problem?
Hey, management, why don't you loosen up a little? There are certain guests I look forward to, and Jeffrey Ma is one of them. He was a member of the MIT blackjack team in the mid-'90s, and now works for ESPN and Analytics. He just sold his company. You were the founder of 10X, or a San Francisco-based startup with a vision to make work and to make work better and your work better. You just sold it to Twitter. Look at you. Look at you. I want to go back to the days. And for the uninitiated, let's take 10, 12 minutes here and talk about MIT. MIT is in the Boston area. It is, along with Caltech, MIT, it would be called one of the real academic centers, especially for engineering and technology, in the world. You and friends like gambling.
Yeah.
Take it from there.
Well, actually, we didn't consider it to be gambling because we had an edge over the casinos. We basically used math to beat the game of blackjack. Blackjack's the only game in the casino that has a memory, meaning what you see impacts what you're going to see. So we counted cards, which is basically tracking the cards that you see to know what cards you're going to see, and you can basically figure out what your edge is and bet more when the odds are in your favor and bet less or walk away from the table when the odds aren't in your favor.
As the movie and the book depict, it worked for a long time. It worked for years. During the run, young man, testosterone, beating Vegas, what was it like?
Yeah, there's a lot of camaraderie. You know, it's me and my buddies. We're like 21, 22 years old, flying to Vegas every couple weekends and, you know, doing what everyone wants to do, which is beat the casinos. And I used to always say it was really funny because there's a huge dichotomy between the flight to Vegas, where everyone's happy and drinking and joking around with the flight attendants, and the flight home, where everyone's tired and hungover and has lost money. Well, on that flight home, we were happy. We were the few people on that plane that were happy because we came in and we'd win, you know, tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars at the casinos.
The avarice, the vanity of man, though, catches up, and you start winning, and people start bragging, and people start talking. And when it started to unravel, Jeffrey, when Vegas started to catch on, how fearful of you were you, of your life and of the situation?
Well, like you said earlier, I mean, it's not illegal. So there was basically, you know, this whole thing that we had to understand, like, we're not doing anything illegal. The problem is, like you said, the casinos don't like it, and it's their private property, and they really want to try to intimidate you so you don't come back. So that was basically one of the issues. I remember one time I was in a riverboat in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I more or less got chased off at gunpoint. And as I'm walking off, I'm like wondering, who's going to notice if an Asian dude disappears in Shreveport, Louisiana?
Did you feel in Vegas casinos your life was ever in danger, or at least peril was in your future?
Yeah, rationally speaking, I'm not sure if I ever really thought it, but like there were moments where they really do crowd your space, and Like, it is in their textbook to go and crowd your space and make you feel physically intimidated. So I was always someone that was like, hey, I'm going to get out of here. But there were guys that got put in back rooms. There were guys that got kicked out of their rooms in the middle of the night when they were sleeping. There were guys that got followed around Vegas. So there was definitely a sense of, hey, these guys are trying to invade your personal life. And actually, there's stories now of people coming back and, like, going through the MIT yearbooks and finding out where people lived and trying to find out their real names. So there was a whole detective agency going after us for a while.
Today, can you go in a casino?
Yeah, I can go in casinos. I just can't play blackjack anywhere. I mean, I come here and I still hang out with my friends and play craps, and I still have great relationships with some of the people in the casinos. I'll sometimes run into people that I knew 15 years ago back in those days, and we'll kind of joke about it, and they'll say, I can't believe you were doing all that. They're like, I didn't realize it until I watched the movie and saw you in the movie and all that kind of stuff. But, yeah, now I can go into the casinos. I just can't play blackjack. If I sit down and play blackjack, they're going to look at me and they're going to be like, what do you think you're doing?
When you look at, you're a millennial, and you're what? How old are you now?
42.
So you're not a millennial. You're just out of it.
I know.
But you think like a millennial, and I bet you live mostly like one.
That's probably true.
The world, global, tech, digital. You just sold a company to Twitter. I'm 50 and not of that generation. How do you view me? As a dinosaur, Jurassic?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, like, I think that the way that technology is shifting, a lot of things are changing. And, you know, one of the things that's really interesting that I talk about all the time is just this sense of privacy that people have, because there's, you know, I work in data and analytics, and people freak out when they think about, like, oh, how do they know so much about me and all this kind of stuff. The next generation that's coming up welcomes people knowing a lot of data about them, because they know that it's going to help them make better decisions, figure out where to eat at restaurants, figure out, you know, what jobs they should be doing. So, I mean, I think the dichotomy is that the older people are sort of not embracing things like data, you know, privacy. They're looking at technology and they're scared of different technological trends. I think that the older people just have to look. It's just like anything else. It's not like this is a new generation. It's just that things are moving a lot faster than they've ever moved before.
Jeffrey Ma is joining us, The Herd on ESPN Radio. Jeffrey, when you work for ESPN now in analytics, I read a story years ago about a guy who picks NFL games in the Bay Area, and he was profoundly accurate.
Yeah.
Have you ever moved in that direction? You could probably make quite a career betting sports.
Well, that's actually what I do for ESPN. I mostly talk about the gambling aspect of it, but I try to talk about it from the aspect of analytics. So I'm not talking about, hey, you know, this is, you know, I'm Vinny from Jersey. The last team was 12-1. I'm actually breaking down the analytics, and on Sundays during the NFL season, I actually give 2 or 3 picks based on what my analytics say about the games, and I did the same thing for the NCAA tournament.
Certain sports, analytics can have more influence.
Yeah.
Other sports, they don't. Is there a sport you find that analytics are better predictors of outcomes?
Well, the obvious one is baseball. Baseball's always been the best sort of one to use analytics, because every event in a baseball game is discrete, meaning there's not a lot of interconnections or synergies that you can't measure. Football is probably, in some respects, the hardest one because there's so many different dynamic things going on. Basketball certainly is also.
Football also has a connective tissue where a left guard can screw up the play for everybody. Baseball is a series of individual battles.
Exactly.
So baseball, if I had your brains, is really, though not as popular, probably the easiest sport to make money betting?
Well, no, but here's the problem. Because baseball is such an easy game for people to do analytically, everybody can do it. So you can't gain as much of an advantage because football is so hard. No, so you know Daryl Morey, who's the general manager of the Houston Rockets.
Yes.
When he first started at the Rockets, I knew he had a background in baseball. Daryl's a friend of mine. I talked to Daryl and I said, Daryl, now that you're in basketball, how are you going to do this? It's so much harder than baseball. Why'd you leave baseball? Or why wouldn't you want to do baseball? And he says, you know what? Baseball is really easy. So everyone else can do analytics in baseball, and I can't gain an advantage. But if I can gain an advantage and I can do something in basketball analytically, I'm going to be able to gain a big advantage because it's so hard.
What is your Twitter account?
At Jeff Ma, Jeffma.
Do you have a company now you're working on besides ESPN that you want to promote?
I just work with Twitter now. I just joined them 3.5 weeks ago. It's a great place. I love it. So, yeah, everyone should sign up for Twitter that's listening if you aren't. It's the best place to get sports information.
Absolute pleasure again.
Yeah, thanks.
Check out The Herd with Colin Cowherd weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNradio.com, and on ESPNU. The Thundering Herd Podcast. To a baseball's best, go ahead. head-to-head in interleague action when the Tigers head to St. Louis to face the Cardinals.
That one is gone.
The pregame at 7 Eastern, first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN and ESPN Radio.